Good evening. My name is Richie Brown. I'm a Ho-Chunk Nation tribal member, and the Ho-Chunk is down in central Wisconsin. We're scattered, so I guess our main reservation is in Black River Falls, which is west central Wisconsin. But we come up to far north is Shawano County. We're in Wittenberg, Wisconsin. We've got sites there. Then we're over on the Wisconsin River in on Couldst. We go down to Baraboo, Wisconsin Dells. We're also over in La Crosse. We have tribal land scattered all across the state. But what I'm here today is to talk to you about the sites that are here in Copper Country. And Professor Shears, I've been a student of his for 40 plus years, but I'm also a friend of his. And last year he had an opportunity to do some traveling with Robin, and they talked about this conference, and then of course Jim said, yeah, I'll do it, I'll be up there. So when he got back to Wisconsin, he called me and he asked me if I wanted to ride along, which I thought would be fun. Yeah, I'll go. But then about 3 weeks ago, Jim showed up at my house with 3 boxes of books and said, I can't make it. Why don't you go? I said, okay, Jim, I'll do it. But his daughter came to town, so I don't blame him for that, for visiting with her instead of the long ride up here. But I thought it'd be a little sunnier day, though, so it was a surprise to me this morning when I stayed down in Waters Meat last night. I got that far after work, so. And the site we're going to talk about today is Eagle Rock. And well, right now it's Eagle Mine, which is north Marquette. And Jim and I were up here. We were over in Ontonagon looking at a site over there years ago. And Jim's friend from Marquette called him. We'll see his name on these slides. But he worked up at Huron Mountain for years as an instructor there, and he has a lot of land there by just south of the Huron Mountain Club, and that's when they started talking about this copper mine over there. And of course, because he owned so much land around it, he didn't want to see the site develop, so he asked us to come and have a look at it, a look at Eagle Rock. So we took a ride up there. Oh, geez. I can't even remember how long ago it's been, but we come up our first trip there, we just that's before there was any mine or any fences or gates or even anybody around. So we spent a lot of time walking around the site and looking at it, and then there was so much there that we knew it was more than just another rock outcropping in the middle of nowhere. So we decided to survey it, and at the same time we started to do a little research. And my tribe has our elders. There's a group of them that are the clan leaders. There's 10 clans left in the tribe. There was 14. We're down to 10 now. But the clan leaders pretty much decide anything that's has a cultural aspect to it. You go to them, and they're the final authority. Whatever they tell you, that's pretty much the way it is. So once we looked at the site and we started surveying, then Jim said, well, he started thinking, he said, well, maybe we should see if they know anything about it. So we had enough sites up here anyway, so we brought them up. There's, like I said, 10, and I got 6 of them in their van, and we come up for a few days, and we stopped at down in Waters Meat. We stayed there, but then we took them out on a pontoon out onto there's an island in Lac Vieux there, and it's not a real big island, but there, if you look on the state map between Michigan and Wisconsin, you'll see there's 2 lines, and it turns, and the turn for the state line is right on this island. So we got out on the island, and we're walking around, and the turn itself, you can see there's a monument set there, but the monument is set right in the back of a whale mound. No, it's significant enough that the surveyor set that, so that there's not a lot of people that actually say, well, let's go have a look at this marker, but if you took the time to go out and see it, you'd see the whale mound. But the island also has a lot of other features on it, which are significant because well, I guess how I got involved with Jim was years ago. I worked for the Ho-Chunk in their lands department, and we were looking at what they'd give me as a task of the clan leaders or the different groups. In their stories, all our oral history is every winter they used to sit and tell before TV and the internet and all that. They'd get together and they'd tell these stories, but the stories you learned them verbatim, so it's word for word. And the stories they had told of all these different events or periods in our history. But the problem they had, they weren't in any kind of a chronological order, or even the locations. It'd been so long since this happened that a lot of them had forgotten where these sites were. So that was one of the things I was tasked with, is they'd tell me the stories and give me as much about the background of the sites as they thought was pertinent, and then it was up to me to go find the sites. So, because Jim was an engineering professor down at UW-Madison for years, and I was my background is in land surveying, so that's how I met Jim Shears. But one of Jim's what he loved to do when you got into the classes, his projects he'd take you around Madison and survey all these effigy mounds. So all his classes did about the same things. You surveyed mounds, and Jim kind of expanded over the years and got into a lot of different areas and stuff. And so once I got out of school, went to work, and we crossed paths again. Then he showed me a site down on the Wisconsin River in Muscadet, there was 12 mounds left. And these were features, they were effigy mounds. And what was on them, or what it was, is we could actually survey the existing mound, but they're part of a much in that site. And we found the documentations for it, so then we surveyed what was left, and then he had one of the ladies he met here along the way. She took the time to draw all these surveys because they were done back in the 1800s by a surveyor that come in and surveyed mounds. He was paid by a railroad baron to survey mounds in Wisconsin and Minnesota. So there's just a wealth of information. It's over in the museum in Minneapolis. We got the maps and produced everything we needed for that site. And what happened, what grew out of that, I guess, is the Ho-Chunk. I took it to them and showed them what was there, and they ended up purchasing the site. So that eventually became our bison ranch. And we had heard about 150 animals down there, but after that, then Jim kept, whenever he got someplace he wanted to go, he'd call me, and then like I said, we were over here at Ontonagon looking at some features, and he said, well, let's go over to Marquette and have a look at what, I'm trying to remember this guy. My memory's getting old too. Fred Ridholm, yeah, that's it. Fred wanted us to look at. So we went to Fred's cabin. He showed us around. We were up on the site. Then we started to survey it. And about that time, we brought up our traditional court and showed him the site. And we showed him several other features. We were over in Barragun. We showed him the mounds there that the tribe owns, and they're right on the lake shore there. And then we had one of their meeting rooms where we sat down and discussed it, and then the clan leaders started talking. Then they told us a story. They related the story that went with this Eagle Rock. But I had a 3D model of it. But what it is the name of the story that they recalled was Under the Deer's Tail. That was the name of the site. But if you've ever been on Eagle Rock and looked at it, when you stand on top of it, there's two distinct rocks there that it splits, and what it looks like is it looks like you're looking at a deer's butt. And so that's the rock, that's the most of the rock. So, and then they told us the story, and it goes back to almost to the last ice age. So that's how far back we're going, and that was, I don't know, 10,000 years ago. What they were talking about is that the Ho-Chunk were there at that time, but what they did is they depleted all the resources. So from there, what happened is the different clan leaders, or they were like Bear Clan and Elk Clan and stuff like that. They sent them in 7 different directions. So part of them left, and that's where some of the tribes come from today that are out west and down south. It's the Oto, the Cheyenne, the Meskwaki, and Crow, I believe, too. Anyway, they sent them because there wasn't enough to feed everybody, so the chief got all the clan leaders together and says, well, some of you have to leave. So they sent them in different directions. So that's where they spread out. So, and we're going way back. But then, along with looking for this, there was another gentleman I met here probably 20 years ago, a Relf Red Fox, who is Northern Cheyenne. When I met him, he was 70 years old, 65, 70, and he was a medicine man for the Northern Cheyenne. But when I met him, he'd been coming to Wisconsin for every summer for, I don't know, 10, 15 years. And then I'd bump into him all the time because I was all over the state all the time. And every once in a while I would cross paths. And then after about, I don't know, 5, 6 years, some of the guys that worked with him, they come to me and they said, well, Relf would like to meet with you. And I said, well, that's good. A meeting, and I met with him down in Wisconsin Dells. And then he told me the story of why he was here and what he was doing. Because in Northern Cheyenne oral history, before they were they're in Montana now. They're in Lame Deer, Montana. But before they were there, they come from the east. And he said the oral history he had, it started in Wisconsin. He can go back to being in Wisconsin, but before Wisconsin, he said they come out of the north. There was a turn made in Wisconsin, and what they did is they marked all this with, I guess it'd be the forerunner of the medicine wheels, because there was wherever they camped, they made an arrangement of rocks, and that pretty much set the direction they come from and the direction they were going. So, and the story Relf got is when they're in Wisconsin, it was about the time there was Glacial Lake, Wisconsin was there. And this story is pretty specific because what it talks about is a group of them were out hunting away from the main party, and that's when Glacial Lake, Wisconsin broke. And part of it drained towards the Mississippi from the Black River. And that's where they was on that, when that breach happened. They were there, and they took that as a sign that they should head west. So that's what they did. So all along the way, and when you're heading west back then, you didn't get in the car on your horse or anything. They pretty much walked. So it took them years to get where they're at, probably generations. But all along the way, they left these markers, these stone alignments. So that's what he was looking for, is he made it back to Wisconsin, backtracking on these. But then there was the site in Wisconsin that had the direction when they turned north. That's what he was trying to locate all those years that he wandered around the state. And he asked me to help him because we were, that's what we were doing too. We were on the same site, so we crossed paths enough that I guess we built enough of a relationship that he trusted me with this information. So I said, sure, Relf, I'll help you. As long as we're out there, it's the same thing. So, and when we came up here and we showed our traditional court, the Eagle Rock site, and the story come out what it was, then I said, well, maybe we should bring Relf. So it was maybe a few months later, it was summertime, we come up and took the same path. We stopped in Waters Meet, and I talked to a friend of mine there, and I said, we want to go out to the island on the lake here in the morning, because we got in kind of late in the day. And he said, well, I can do that. So how many of you? So we told him, well, there's probably 6 of us. So he said, well, I'll be outside the front door of the hotel at 10 o'clock with a boat. I said, okay, we'll meet you there. So he took us out there, and we got Relf in the boat. Of course, Relf wasn't liking the boat too good. Well, Relf had been in the Navy, but he didn't like boats. So he got in and he just clamped on with both hands onto the sides of the boat until we got out to the island. Then you almost had to pry his hands off the boat. But we took him out there and we showed him what was on the island. And he said, okay. But then he was glad to get off the island, back on dry land. But then when we brought him up here to Eagle Rock, and it's a small climb to get up on top of the thing, we got him up there, because he had a lot of assistance. He actually had a nurse that traveled with him because he was a kind of frail guy. We got up there, and he just lit right up as soon as he got up on top. He got up and found one spot there, and he could stand in this spot. And then his guys, he'd say, I want you to go over there, a couple hundred feet. Tell me what you find. And then he'd point over here, and over here, and over here. And what he was doing is he was sending them to all these features that were there. And the outcome of all that is the site that Relf was looking for in Wisconsin, we never did find because it's underwater. And when they built one of the dams there on the Wisconsin River, it flooded the site. We got close to it, but it's underwater. So then what happened then is we pretty much skipped that site, and then when he got up on top of Eagle Rock, he said, this is where we come from. Because his story, it's the name of the site is it's the home of the white wolf. So that was, so it's the same place. So, and then it all starts tying everybody together real fast. So Eagle Rock has a lot of meaning to a lot of different people, but it was important to the Northern Cheyenne because that traces their history back 10,000 years. So you can see that the Ho-Chunk have been here a long time, along with a lot of the other tribes. And you get out west and you go into their facilities, and they all make reference to, they'll say Red Banks. And Red Banks is in our oral history too. It's where our tribe met Nicolay. And depending on who you talk to down at Ho-Chunk, they'll say, Red Banks is over by Green Bay. But when we brought our clan leaders up to Baraga, they were looking at that, and then they went out and looked at the features in their park, the mounds that are in their park, and then they started talking about the story then about Red Banks when they met Nicolay. And they said the size of the village then, it was so big that it'd take 2 days to walk from one end to the other. So if you're down in Baraga and you wanted to walk over at the, what's the next town around the bend there? It was all a village site. So, and if you're driving down there along the water's edge, you see all those banks there as red as you can get. So, and that's pretty much what the traditional court agreed on then, that Red Banks is actually Baraga. So, but those that didn't come with us, the clan leaders that didn't come up, there was a big fight there then over where it was. They're still battling over it today. But anyway, that's how we got here, and that's why I'm here, because these sites are real important to us, and the Ho-Chunk history, like I said, we go back 2 ice ages, so we've been here a long time, and this is actually part of us too. And what I'm going to show you here is, if I can, did my guy run away? I'll have to see what I can do here. Hang on a second. This is Merlin Red Cloud. He was one of our past president way back before gaming, so that's in the 80s. But he worked for me for a time as a researcher, and that's what he did. Is he was one of the guys that helped me put the stories to the geography together, the features. So he knew the stories, and I knew enough about the Wisconsin that we could usually find these spots together. But like I said, Merlin's no longer with us, but he found a lot of features, so I have to give him credit for what he did. Okay, the next one here. There we go. Okay, and what we're in the UP, like I said, the story that the other thing that brought us up here was a book that was written over in Baraga by a game warden here, Ron Stevie. He wrote a book about Nicolet, and he actually did a lot of research, and he mapped it and the measurements they took, and see if Green Bay is down here, and that's where they wanted to claim that Red Banks is down there, right inside the little bay there. But if you follow the documents or the logs for Nicolet, he'll come around, and where he's at, everything takes him right into the Keweenaw, or the Baraga, into the bay there. So that was some more ammunition we used, and also when I brought traditional cord up here, we took the time to sit down and discuss with the author, and he gave him more information and more detail as to why he thought this was it. So that was a little more ammunition we needed to convince those that still wanted to argue with us. Okay, the next one. And over by, at supper we were talking about this Paquaming Point, which is right out of Lance, or it's a doctor's place there, but there's a lot of features right in his yard. And we surveyed them, and something I'd never seen before was these they look like stone barrels. They're probably this high, but they're laid out. They're not cemented or grouted together. It's just rocks that were piled this high. And they're probably 10, 12 feet across, but they look like barrels is what, There's a lot of features out on his point, but, everything, Jim being a surveyor, he took precise measurements on everything. We surveyed everything, but then he also tied it down to true north. So everything we did, we always had to take a sunshot before we were done, just to prove where we were, and so what we're doing here is building enough control into all these documents that we can actually relate them. So we have coordinates, if you will, GPS coordinates and everything we do now. So we can actually compare the notes, and a lot of these sites have built-in directions in them. They're all pointing to something. And it isn't until you start putting them all together that you get the bigger picture. Okay. There you go. That's Fred. But what he had the opportunity to do up in Huron Mountain Club. He worked there for so many years. There's a lot of features there, and nobody had access to but the members and Fred, because he worked for him. But there's a face there, there's all kinds of features, but they've been there forever, you know. They're documented, but you'll never get in to see them. And this is, I think that they almost border that Eagle Rock mine now. They're right next to it. And Fred owns Huron Mountain Club's on one side and Fred's on the other side of the mine, so that's how close it is. And when we first started, Fred was looking for some help and to try to stop the mine. We slowed him down, but we didn't stop him, I guess, is what the outcome of all that. But we did get a chance to document the site, and pretty much that's, I think we preserved most of it, because if you go there, there's not much, but it's fenced around where they don't actually go up on top. The only ones they let into it now are natives. If you're going up there to do a ceremony, they'll let you in, but anyone else, there's no access to it, so, okay. Well, it's kind of, okay, now I wish my guys made a 3D model of this, but you can see the two sides here. That's if you look at it, it looks like a deer's butt, is what it looks. And that's where our story comes from, the under the deer's tail. But then all the features that Relf was looking at were on a little farther over on that side. And that's the book has just tons of pictures of all these things in there. But everything is pretty much intact. It was left alone. Well, this is so far out in the brush that nobody really went up there, because there was, I guess, the deer up here, you don't need to go up on there to chase them. They're all over. And the site itself was in great shape for how long it's been there. But the features that brought us here was just the shape of the site itself. But then everything Relf was related to was over there. So it's the same place, it's just from two different perspectives is all. Ooh. There, it's coming in a little better. Okay, well, you can see that there's features on this side, but there's more maps in here that breaks it up into 4 different quadrants, and it'll show you all the features as they spread out across the site too. When we first started going in there to survey it, that was before the mine bought it or had control of it. You could actually drive around back and walk in from the top down and go in that way. But now everything's fenced, and I think the entrance to the mine now is right under this end. They go in and go that way. So, but they leave the top of the hill alone. So that's the only gain we got. But why they're there is the copper that's underneath it, and the copper itself isn't right under here. It's maybe a quarter mile off under the river next door there. Interesting story about that. When we first started visiting this place, I used to, well, I still do. Every once in a while, when I'm driving down the road or something, you know, I'll see these things. I'll see these things, you know, how everybody, when you're riding along getting bored, looking at the clouds, you can see different stuff in the clouds. One of the trips up here years ago, I was, still in Wisconsin, but I could see this huge buffalo and just, you know, fill the sky in front of me. And I'm thinking, okay, now what's up? So, but I spent a few days up here working. I went back to my desk, and I got a call from a friend of mine out in South Dakota. And that's when I was still working on our buffalo project. And he said, well, Badlands Park there, right in Wall Drug, just south of Wall Drug. He said that they did their fall roundup, and they've got 25 head of buffalo. If you want them, you can have them. So I said, okay, we'll do that. So, and I was, at that time, we owned that site in Muscadet, and that was our proposal, was to build a buffalo ranch down there. But at that time, I didn't have the fencing done or anything. I had maybe a containment area, only about an acre or so. I said, well, I got to build some fence. So he said, well, this guy was a rancher. He lived on the reservation just south of the park. And he said, tell you what I'll do, because he had buffalo and cattle too. He said, send me the check for the animals. I'll go bring them, we'll bring them onto my ranch, and I'll take care of them until you get your fences built, which was the next summer. So that's what we did. So I come up with the money, sent him a check to buy the animals. They transported them to his place. So then we were busy all winter. We set it all up. So by it was midsummer, we had the first fences built, and the wells drilled and everything. So then they transported. He brought our 25 head onto the ranch, because we had 4 there to start with, and they were just in a small facility. But then we grew real fast from there, and then we ended up around 150 head down there. But things popped into my head. And same thing with Eagle Rock. I was going somewhere, and I got hit with this thing where I seen this. There was 3 things I seen. First, I seen the mound, or the feature like this, the hill. But then I seen a baby. A little baby that was there, but then I also seen a wolf's head. But it looked like a cartoon because it was laughing. So I just wrote it down, and I said, well, that'll, whatever it is, I'll be aware of it. And then one of the guys that worked for me at that time, he was cruising the internet when we were working on Eagle Rock, and he found the mine had actually put out a website for a while that showed what their plans and what they were going to do, but it also had the ore deposit, or the copper deposit, that was, they had enough that they could produce a 3D model of it. And when I added here on the jump drive somewhere, if we get time, we'll look later, but it shows you the copper deposit underneath the mine, or underneath the ground. And what it does, it looks like a baby. It's got a head and a body, but then you can rotate it. It's high-tech enough that you can actually rotate the view and go around to the back side of the baby, and that's where you see that wolf's head, the laughing wolf's head. So whoa! So it's I get things like this that just kind of keep me going, but. That's why we had so much interest here, and we kept going on this site and liking this all the time, because he lives in the woods most of the summer. But this is towards the back end of the report, and this gives you the conclusions about everything about here. But it talks about the stone features and everybody's input into it, and that it is a culturally significant site, and we were trying to protect it, but because the laws of Michigan wouldn't allow it, that's why the mine is there today. So, and the Rio Tinto, it was the parent company to that venture up here, and they just they tried doing the same thing out in Montana. So the Northern Cheyenne, they were real aware of it, because they were trying to get on their reservation out there. So they beat them out there, so they come back here, and they were part of the lawsuit against Rio Tinto here in Michigan too. But because the state of Michigan is, it's mining all the way. So it's pretty hard sell to get them, the state, to listen, because the agency that issued the permit for it, the week after they issued the permit, they pretty much dissolved the agency. So there is no recourse then if the people that got their name on the permit are not there anymore. So that's what put it into a court, and I think it's still there, but they're mining now, or they're trying to. But then the other thing that come into play was the economy. Is the price of copper fell, so they pretty much shut down things. That's just down in our country. We're dealing with sand mines, which is the same thing. But the price of the oil took a dump here a little while ago too. So the mines are all shutting down there by us too. So that's the world we live in. Okay. Yep. Okay, now this gives you a little more perspective on it. This is the rock itself. So we spent time here. Okay, well, go ahead. And what I talked about all these long-range alignments, and Jim has done a lot of work. We've surveyed a lot. We've surveyed a lot of medicine wheels all across the country, and we've been up in Canada a couple times, and out west, and they actually tied to down in Mexico too, Guatemala. The sites down there, they actually have alignments that would bring you right back up here to Eagle Rock. So that's how significant the sites are. A lot of people will look at it and say, "Oh no, this is all conjecture," but no, mathematically can be proven. It's a fact that they all point here. So, okay. And a lot of you will recognize the Serpent Mound here. That was in the news a little while ago, but that's down in Ohio. And these are there's bear mounds here. They're over across the river in Minnesota, down by Prairie du Chien. But they were in the news a little, as recent as last week, I think, because of the issues down there. They had a lady that was a manager down in the park. She wasn't doing her due diligence because they built all kinds of service building and stuff, but this whole area is an archaeological site, and she never did any studies. And she was building over a lot of stuff, and the Park Service tried to cover it up. They transferred her down to an office job somewhere in Iowa, and then they just buried it. But then some news reporters got on it, and they had to unbury it real fast and take some action. So basically they had to admit that they were at fault and say, "Oh, we're sorry." But anytime they do anything that has an impact on these cultural sites, they're supposed to do a environmental impact study, which gives the tribes opportunity to comment on this stuff. And that's one of the things they never did. And that's what they pretty much got slapped for. I don't know what will come out of it, but that was in the news lately. And this other site here is down in Mexico. But and when you think about it, it's the Earth being a ball, and you say, well, these are so far apart. How do you get any kind of any coordinate? How do you get alignments out of this stuff because they're so distant? But they're actually built into everything here. I know it's, and you think about, some of this stuff, it's hard to comprehend today how you do it. And how would they do it back in ancient times? But Jim's been working on that puzzle for a lot of years, and he's come up with some amazing solutions. Stonehenge is another one. Now that's unique. I'd like to visit that site. That's on my bucket list, I guess. Okay. And then these are the lines down in Peru. And then you got to wonder, how did they lay these out, and how could you project these lines for miles? You get all that, so we're getting into something where it's hard to fathom some of this stuff, that it can be shot like that. Okay. And that's what Jim's always been trying to prove this at all these sites, that everything that's there is not random, and that they all have meaning in them. That they're almost built in layers, where you can look at the features that are there and say, oh, this is that, or that's that. But if you can, take the time to study them and look closer at the alignments that are in there and the directions they point and what how they built them. And because we're surveyors, it's I guess it intrigues us more than most. Where you want answers is how all this happened. How could you do it? In fact, how could they lay this out with that kind of accuracy thousands of years ago? Okay. The same thing with the pyramids. And there's what happened here, I think it was this summer. Was it summer solstice? Where you had the different planets aligned up on top of each one of those. So it's amazing stuff when you think, well, first of all, to build those is amazing, but then to actually put them where they had meaning in them, that's a whole nother level. But there's a pyramid mound like this over on the Ontonagon River. It's not this big and it doesn't look like this, but it's there, and it's a feature that you go up the river about 6 miles and into the woods, in the mosquitoes, and ticks. We were there quite a few years ago. Jim and I went in there, and a friend of ours, Bill Kingswan, went with us. We took a boat, and he said, well, we were up there working on something. He said, I want to show you something, but we need a boat to do it. So it was the next time we come up, we brought a boat. And we said, okay, Jim, we got the boat, let's see it. So we went up the river, and he took us into this pyramid mound. And it's a mound, and it's steep enough. I think it's almost like a 2-to-1 slope. So to get up it, you're bent over, and basically you're pushing from one leg to the other to get up to the top. It's about 72 feet high, and we took a ton of pictures there too when we were on it. And then on the face of it faces to the south, the one face. But then off to the north, it's built. It kind of blends in with the features of the topography. But the north end of it goes off like the body of a snake. It just it goes down, but it wanders. It wraps it down, probably 400 or 500 feet. Okay, next one. So, and that's the same thing. There's amazing stuff here when you think about it or try to comprehend it. I get lost in some of this. Okay. And this is yep, this is a Bighorn medicine wheel. And we were out there, and we surveyed all this. Jim and I and Bill took a ride out there. And that was back before they had the fence around it. We actually Jim set up on one side, and we surveyed all the legs, or the spokes of it, and those rock cairns. I was in every one of them, holding a rod. And then to get our alignment, Jim sent Bill off on the top of a mountain just off to the east of there. That took Bill the rest of the day to climb up there and give us a shot. Because being from Wisconsin, we're used to about 800 feet in elevation. And there we were up probably 9,000 feet. And that was in one day, because we got in the car in my office in Blacker about 3 in the afternoon. We drove all night, and we got here about 9 in the morning. And we set up and we surveyed till dark. Then we got back in the car, and we drove down to a motel, stayed overnight, and I got up the next. No, we didn't even stay. We stayed one night, but I think we come back and surveyed a little more the next day, because besides this medicine wheel, there's a lot of other features out here that nobody really looks at. They're all intrigued by the medicine wheel. But if you go off to the west a little bit, there's a lot of more rock cairns. Then there's a small canyon there that you walk up to the edge of it, and there's it looks like a snake. It's the same thing. It's got the body of a snake, but then it's given birth. There's like a big egg there too. So there's amazing stuff there. And you know, of course, Jim was still over here writing notes, and we just went for a walk, Bill and I, and there was and they were amazed by what we found, but we couldn't drag Jim away from what he was doing. He wouldn't go over there and look at it. So that's another trip. We'll have to go back and show him the rest of what the features that are there. But there's stories there that the tribes will tell you about this too. Okay.
Where was that?
This is in Wyoming. And back up just a second. Yeah. And it'll take you right into it. It's off the interstate. I'll show you where it is. But the alignments here, there's an alignment built into this that points up to Eagle Rock. So that's why this is part of it too, because we surveyed that, and that actually comes back to Eagle Rock. But there's also another alignment built in this that'll take you right down to Prairie du Chien. It shows you right where the Wisconsin River dumps into the Mississippi. So, you know, there's enough information built in here that you could come back, and that's what Relf was talking about. Is that this is one that they built, but if you go out there, there's all kinds of these all over. They aren't this big, but there's smaller ones all across the country, and that's what they ended up doing. Is this is their road map and also their oral history. This is how they come back. So this tells them the story. This is how they documented their story, was right here, and that's what brought them back. So everything they needed to know was built into these things, and this, along with their oral history, is what brought them back to Wisconsin. But like I said, there was a place in Wisconsin where they made that turn that he had to find and he couldn't find, and because it was underwater, because we built a dam on the Wisconsin River. So, but like I said, we skipped that step and we actually found his site. So Relf is real grateful for that. So, okay, the next one. So what's in a lot of these features you're going to find is the true north and the alignments. That's big here, the summer solstice, the equinox, directions to other sites, and the geometry and latitude of the site. That's built into a lot of this stuff. And there's a site down in Devil's Lake, which is in Wisconsin. It's just along the Wisconsin River. It's where the glacier stopped. It's Baraboo Range, and right there, we have a story about it. And our oral history talks about how Devil's Lake was created. If you've ever been there, it's just, it looks like you're out west somewhere, because there's just a ton of rock spires and everything that come out of the ground. But our story and our oral history talks about it, and it says this is a site where the Sky Clan and the Earth spirits, they had a fight there. But this is what my ancestors witnessed, is they were there when this all happened. They seen this being created. But what it was is when the glacier melted, it took a lot of the pressure off the surface of the earth. So this is just the rebound. All this stuff come back out of the ground. That's like when you get out of bed in the morning, your bed comes back up. Just if you take a mile of ice off the top of you, Mother Earth was relieved, so it come back up in a hurry, and that's what created the Devil's Lake. So, and the Ho-Chunk, the name for that wasn't Devil's Lake, it was Spirit Lake. But when the Europeans got there, they didn't want to use that, because they were trying to get rid of anything that we had reference to. So that's why they changed the name from Spirit Lake to Devil's Lake. it made them feel better about it. But what happened here in the news here a few months ago is there was a Badger ammunition plant down there in Sauk County. And that was 7,000 acres, and the Army had it since back in the 40s. And they built a lot of ammunition propellants there, you know, gunpowder, stuff like that. And been there a long time, and it come and went. And then here back in the early 80s, they decided that the federal government declared surplus property, they didn't need it anymore. So as soon as that happened, then we went in there and we started the same thing. We started surveying the sites, started surveying documenting everything that was there, the medicines that are there, the plants, and then we tied it right into Devil's Lake, which is, they're contiguous, so it's just over the hill from it. And it was, a month ago we had a ceremony down there at Badger Ammunition where the federal government gave the Ho-Chunk Nation 1,553 acres back. It was returned to us as tribal land. So that's where our new buffalo herd's gonna go, is down there, so, okay. But this is Eagle Rock. And these are all the features I talked about, where Relf was actually standing just up on top of the hill a little bit. He didn't come up too far, and he could stand and point. He could stand there and almost go around in a circle, and his guys could find this stuff. So, and when we're all done, he was satisfied that this was the site he was looking for. This is where they come from too. So, you know, so basically what it did is it brought the two stories together just like that. But without our oral history and his oral history, this wouldn't have happened. And it was just, I thought it was coincidence, but the older you get, you learn that there's not a lot of coincidence in the directions we get anymore. It's, I think there's somebody else, there's a hand that guides us in all this. I don't know what it is, but it's here, and we're making use of it on a lot of lands that are coming back. And this is just one that we didn't win the battle, but the fight's not over yet, so. And we went out in Wyoming, and there's the alignment that brings you right back up to Eagle Rock. And when you think about it, you say, well, that's quite a ways away. How'd they do that? But if you carry that line all the way to there, it'll come right out within a half a mile of Eagle Rock. So, and it's amazing geometry, but they had that ability back then, and we're just learning to understand it now, you know, because we GPS everything, but Jim, being the surveyor he is, we still have to do those sun shots. He doesn't trust GPS either, so, okay. And there's our line, you can see it, and it brings you right back to where the mound is there, but it also goes through the Porcupine Mountains. And I was on a backpacking trip there years ago, because Ho-Chunk, they have a youth program where they take the kids, either go backpacking in the summer on a canoe trip. And they alternate years, but we're up here backpacking with a bunch of boys, and it's like a 3 or 4 day event where they drop you off, then you got to walk around and come back out. Well, and everybody's got about is it a 60-pound pack or a 90-pound pack? Because you got everything you need on your back for 3 or 4 days. And I got over the hill, so I was pretty committed to it by then. But what happened is I tore my knee. And so after the first night, my knee hurt so bad that I couldn't carry the pack. So these boys, you know, because the next camp, they'd actually run ahead, drop their gear, and run back and get my stuff. And then they'd go ahead. So it was with the help of them and a hiking stick I bought at their visitor center there that I made the trip around. But then when I got back and went to the doctor, he said, oh yeah, you tore one of the ligaments that attaches the muscle to your kneecap came loose. And he said, but you don't need surgery right now, because you'll know when you do, because it's just a little tear like that, and it'd flop out every once in a while, and then you'd end up dragging your leg along till it went back in. So after about 4 years, you figure out, well, let's do the surgery. He says, I didn't like the idea of getting my knee cut open, but after a while, it was worth it to beat the pain. Okay. And we talked about these long-range alignments, and that's what this shows too, is the pyramids down in Kyoto through, okay, the next. They show you the, if any of you have been down into Illinois, down to the mound site down there, there's a huge one down there. What's the name of that? Yeah, Cahokia, down there. The alignments here take you to Cahokia. They also take you to a site in Oklahoma. Yep. So this takes you right through all these sites, and it brings you up into Wisconsin too, and takes you right north through here. So there's alignments that are built in that'll take you to all these sites. And you know, it's unbelievable, but all the information's there. You just have to understand it. But when you have to think how long ago these were built and how they can build this kind of accuracy, then you know it's amazing stuff. Okay. You see the line here goes all the way through, all the way up into the UP, and it'll take you all the way up into the Arctic too, because there's features up there that actually there's dolmens. That's a whole nother story. You can get into them, but there's actually a dolmen over in the Huron Mountain Club. There's a small one. There's some down by Badger Ammunition along the Badger Range. There's one in there, and that one down there is big enough you can actually get underneath it, and it's 14 feet high. Because I've been in, it's up on the hill. I've been underneath it, and then up on top you can see where somebody built a fire there because it was charred on top. And then there's one up on when you get up in the Boundary Waters. We took Jim and he had to show me. There's one on the one. Yeah, and it's, you get there and you get your compass out, and there's a line through there where your compass will spin right around, and it won't point north, it'll point south. But it's only good for about 5 feet, and then it goes back where it belongs. But I don't know what it is. But we were there, and
right under the dome, the same thing is.
yeah. So you can, you know, there's so many things up there that you don't understand, but somebody knew it because that's why the dolmen's there. So there's all kinds of features all over the place, and if you take the time to study them, they lead you to some amazing places. Okay. Well, so this gives you a little more background and explains a lot of these sites to you. But what I was trying to get everybody to I guess get a different perspective on all these sites is that there's an energy to these sites too that you need to be aware of, that it's not just old sites and they're not just artifacts, and there's what I would call a spirit of the place, because you know what our elders tell us, when you go to these sites, the first thing you should do is pour some tobacco, say a prayer, and tell them why you're there. You're not there to disturb the site, you're there to learn from it. And they'll understand that. But if you just, and the other thing that I learned, and I told everyone that worked for me, is whatever you find there, you leave there. Because you don't want to take anything home with you, because along with that will come a spirit that's put there to protect it. And of course, the one guy I had work for me, I guess he didn't believe me because he took something home from one site we were on quite a few years ago, and that was on a Friday. And then Saturday morning, I got a call from him. He said, "What's up, Bill?" He said, "Well, boss, we got to go back." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Do you remember you told me not to take it?" "Yeah." I said, "Oh, no." He said, "Yeah, I did." He said, "But I got to put it back." So it bothered him, there was something there that bothered him, so I told him this was a Saturday. I said, "Well, meet me at work," and we got in a truck at work, and it was like a 3-hour ride, and we went back to the site, then he had to hike in, and he put it back where he found it. So, and the same way with Professor Shears, he did a survey down in, there's a underwater pyramid down in, what is it? There you go. Anyway, they were surveying there with a survey class, and they had some guys scuba diving down there. Of course, one of the students thought he'd be a wise guy, and he took one of the rocks off the pyramid. Didn't tell anybody, but he took it, and he kept it, and he must have had it for 20 years. And, he called Professor Shears one day. This is probably 20 years later. Jim got a call, and the guy told him what his name was and what class he was in, and Jim, okay, I remember. And then he told him, "Well, I took something, and I want to put it back." So, yes, Professor Shears, would you go with me? And Jim said, "Yeah, sure." So the guy lived in somewhere in California, got on a plane, and he was there the same week he showed up. And him and Jim went out there, and they got a boat, and they took it. Of course, they had GPS coordinates on the pyramid, so they got back out over it, and they put it back in the water, and the guy thanked him, and I guess he felt a lot better, because it must have bothered him for a long time, though, before he finally figured out what it was. So, like I said, on these sites, you sure can visit them, but you should also respect them. And the preservation of the sites is what I'm all about. So that's why we're diligent on what we do, and it may take us a while, but we do find them, and we have a great respect for the site. So I'm hoping you will too. Thank you. Oh, sure.
Hey, Rich, I just want to let you know that
His eyeballs just lit up, and it was just a great spiritual experience for all of us. So appreciate the work that you guys did up there too.
Yeah, we did a lot with the tribes. We tried real hard to energize them and infuse them with what the ammunition you need, because anytime you're battling a corporation like that, it's
I was in the same boat you were in. I was trying to
yeah.
drive some enthusiasm into certain people to put up a tougher fight.
Oh yeah. Well, I guess we win some and we lose some, but we keep fighting. So like I said, we worked on that Badger plant. I think we spent probably 15 years there before we finally got a transfer out of them. And we did the same down in the Kickapoo Reserve. It took us probably 10 years there, but slowly, and I guess with the one thing that Ho-Chunk people have is tenacity, I guess. They stick right at it. Thank you.
One thing that you said is very true. Having worked quite a few years now as an archaeologist, is that when you stated that all of these sites, they're sites there, but people in a sense are still there. The spirits of those people are still there, and it's important that when we do visit those sites, to truly understand that. And I know in working with professional archaeologists, I'll just say this: my observation is those who are successful at it are those who got a pretty good understanding of it, and those who do have a very good understanding of it are also more successful, I'll say, at working on those sites than those who just go there in a mindless manner and do not understand that you do have to talk to the people that were there I myself offer tobacco when I go to a site and work on it. And I tell those who are there why I'm there, and it works out. And if you don't do that, there's a difference.
Yeah,
As an archaeologist.
you can have, bring a lot of problems home with you. Because these things will follow you home. They've done that to me countless times because my kids are pretty much in tune to that. And they'll tell their mom, you know, because they see things. And what we do is about once a month or so, we'll actually smudge the house. And what that is you're using cedar, and you just get it to smolder a little bit, and then you start down the basement, you go through the house, and you open a window or door and just kind of push them right. Tell them, well, it's nice you came to visit, but now you got to leave. So and they'll go away and leave you alone till the new company arrives. So, but it's something that's ongoing. So anytime you're in this business, you know what it's like, because there are spirits there that can harm you, and you may not believe me, but if you ever experience it, you'll know what it is. So, thank you.